Before maps, before borders, there was a mound. The Choctaw people tell of a sacred journey guided by the Creator that led them to a place unlike any other. This is Nani-Waiya, the Mother Mound. And to the Choctaw, it is the place where a nation was born. Our story begins here, in the heart of what is now Mississippi, thousands of years before the first Europeans ever set foot on this land. According to Choctaw oral tradition, our ancestors came from the west. The Creator gave them a sacred pole, a guide for their journey. Each evening they would place it in the ground. If it leaned the next morning, they would travel in that direction. This went on for many seasons, across plains, rivers, and forests, until one morning the pole stood perfectly upright. They had arrived at Nani-Waiya, a great earthen mound that had been here since the ancient days. It was a sign. This was the place they would call home. The mound was not just a marker of their journey. It was the center of their world. The Choctaw built villages nearby, clearing fields to plant corn, beans, and squash. The three sisters' crops that sustained them through the seasons. Men hunted deer, turkey, and small game, while women gathered wild plants, berries, and medicinal herbs. The people lived in clans, each with responsibilities, from leadership to spiritual guidance, and every decision was rooted in consensus and respect for the elders. They played stickball, a game that was more than sport. It was ceremony, diplomacy, and sometimes a way to settle disputes without bloodshed. Some interesting facts. Choctaw homes were wattle and daub structures, built from local wood and clay. Ceremonial fires burned in the heart of the village, kept alive year-round. Long before the Choctaw stood at Nani-Waiya, the land was part of a vast and interconnected world. Archaeologists call it the Mississippian culture, a network of thriving cities, ceremonial centers, and villages that stretched from the Great Lakes to the Gulf Coast. These were not isolated settlements. They were connected by rivers that acted as highways, carrying people, goods, and ideas across hundreds of miles. Shell beads from the Gulf Coast have been found in the heart of the Great Plains. Copper from the upper Midwest made its way into Choctaw homelands, shaped into ceremonial plates and ornaments. Stone tools from as far as the Ozarks tell of an exchange system that bound together dozens of different nations. The mounds themselves, like Nani-Waiya, were not just piles of earth. They were the foundations for temples, council houses, and homes of respected leaders. They stood as symbols of stability, spiritual connection, and the power of the community to work together on something far larger than any one person. For the Choctaw, these ancient connections are more than history. They are proof that their ancestors were part of a great, sophisticated civilization, one that had already mastered agriculture, diplomacy, and architecture long before the first Europeans arrived. The Choctaw did not emerge in isolation. They were born from a rich, interconnected world, and they carried that legacy forward into the new challenges they would face. By the middle of the 16th century, strangers were moving through the southeast, men in metal, carrying weapons of fire, riding animals no Choctaw had ever seen. They were led by Hernando de Soto, a Spanish conquistador searching for gold and riches. When the Spanish entered Choctaw homelands, the meeting was cautious. The Choctaw had heard stories from neighboring nations, tales of strange men who took what they wanted, left sickness behind, and vanished as quickly as they came. At first, there was curiosity. The Spanish offered bright glass beads, iron tools, and cloth in exchange for food and guidance. But trust was short-lived. De Soto's demands grew, and his army began taking supplies without consent. The Choctaw response was decisive. Warriors gathered, painting their bodies in red and black, preparing for battle. One account from the Spanish side described the Choctaw as fierce fighters, using the forests and rivers to their advantage, striking swiftly before melting back into the trees. While the Spanish eventually moved on, they left behind something far more dangerous than steel or gunpowder: disease. Smallpox, measles, and influenza spread through the southeast, killing thousands who had never seen a European face. Whole villages were emptied in a matter of weeks, and the balance of life the Choctaw had known for centuries began to shift. This first contact was not the end. It was the opening chapter in a long, uneasy relationship between the Choctaw and the powers arriving from across the sea. It marked the start of a new and unpredictable era, one where diplomacy, adaptation, and resilience would be tested like never before. In the late 1600s, a new presence arrived: the French. Unlike the Spanish, who came as conquerors, the French came as traders and allies. They saw the Choctaw as valuable partners in the fur trade and as a powerful force in the geopolitics of the Southeast. The Choctaw quickly recognized the opportunity. French goods, iron axes, metal knives, muskets, cloth, and cooking pots offered advantages in daily life and in defending their territory. In return, the Choctaw provided furs, hides, and their strength as military allies. These alliances went beyond trade. During conflicts like the Chickasaw Wars in the early 1700s, the Choctaw fought alongside the French against their traditional rivals. Their warriors were renowned for their discipline and knowledge of the land, often turning the tide of battle. But alliances were never simple. As British influence expanded from the east, the Choctaw found themselves balancing relationships with multiple European powers, playing one against the other to protect their sovereignty. They used diplomacy as skillfully as they used the bow or musket, securing treaties and trade agreements that allowed them to maintain a measure of independence even as colonial borders closed in. Through it all, they remained Choctaw, guided by clan law, oral tradition, and the unbroken memory of Nani Waya. The outside world was changing, and the Choctaw were changing with it, but their identity and unity endured. From the sacred mound of Nani Waya to the alliances and diplomacy of the 18th century, the Choctaw people built a life deeply rooted in their homeland. They adapted to new worlds, navigated shifting alliances, and carried their identity forward through centuries of change. But the 19th century would bring a storm like no other. The United States, hungry for land, would turn its attention to the Choctaw Nation. Promises would be made, and promises would be broken. The journey west, the Trail of Tears, was about to begin. In our next episode, we step into that moment in history, the Treaty of Dancing Rabbit Creek, and the heartbreaking choice that divided a nation. If you've been moved by this story, help us share it. Click the like button, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you'll know when the next episode is released. Every story we tell here on First Nations Uncovered keeps Native history alive and makes sure these voices are never forgotten. Your support helps us continue this work, so join us and be part of telling the stories they didn't teach you in school.